rolling out what may become a compulsory civic service for teenagers. And it's called Service National Universal, and it lasts a month. So 15 and 16-year-olds go to a different region from where they live and stay in a big tent or cabin or room in groups of 10. And each group has a supervisor, an adult. The teenagers train in first aid, emergency response, including natural or man-made disasters, learn about driving. After this, they spend 2 weeks volunteering at a charity or public agency like a fire department. So the teenagers are responsible for tasks and chores. Cell phone use is restricted. It's a political initiative in France, and it's politically popular, intended to create national spirit and overcome social divisions. The cost is around $2,000 per participant. So if it was extended to the entire US, that would be $8 billion, given there are 4 million 16-year-olds. It's more feasible to imagine this configured for a single state like California, which has 1/8 of all the 16-year-olds, so it might cost $1 billion. And I'm going to present pros and cons of this service for 16-year-olds in California. I'll give 2 pro arguments, then 2 con arguments, then 2 pro, 2 con, and finally a pro and a con. So pro number 1, we have no secular rites of passage within families or communities for girls or boys to mark becoming a physical adult. Almost every traditional culture does. Usually it involves separation from one's family or community. This stereotype is a boy or girl enters the rite of passage and comes out a man or woman. When we see boys joining gangs, girls doing violence to themselves, teen pregnancies, and the many young adults who seem trapped in adolescence, it's a sign we need modern rites of passage. Compulsory civic service is a useful vehicle for this. Pro argument 2. Outward Bound is the most successful wilderness education program around. It offers a rite of passage experience that takes place in a challenging natural setting where people have to push themselves. The adventures generate self-confidence and sense of achievement, problem-solving skills. Outward Bound programs for youth help participants transition to adulthood. California has abundant wilderness that could be used for a civic service program that started with an outward bound experience. Con argument 1. The very reason a civic service program seems useful warns against it. Across America and California, teenagers use drugs, mostly cannabis, but narcotic sales are prevalent in every community. Many families are dysfunctional with adults who have firearms. There is no way a civic service program will prevent 16-year-olds from bringing drugs and possibly weapons. Teenagers that have resisted drug and alcohol use will be forced to spend 24 hours a day with those who use them, and the influence will go both ways. Con argument 2. Homicide is the 3rd leading cause of death for adolescents in the US. A statewide program will inevitably have homicides and suicides. At the baseline level, in any 2 weeks of the year, about 2 California children and teens die from gunshot and 8 are wounded. So that's what we can expect, at least in a civic service program. Also, the risks involved in emergency training and wilderness challenges spread across 500,000 16-year-olds will lead to many serious injuries. Pro argument 3. California itself is a natural resource. There are more native species here than any other state. The terrain ranges from alpine to desert scrub, oak woodlands to grasslands, vernal pools to redwood forests, to spring-fed lakes, to coastal wetlands, and of course the ocean and beaches. Conservation needs are everywhere. For example, bird and mammal diversity and abundance increases with understory thinning that also limits fires, but there's not enough manpower to do effective understory work, like removing invasive plants. A conservation civic service would have a huge benefit and provides an ideal place for a wilderness experience. Pro argument 4. California has immense volunteer needs, from delivering meals to seniors, to community waste reduction, to earthquake prep, to neighborhood gardens, to collecting unused food and distributing it, to helping the Red Cross, to mentoring foster youth, climate mitigation. There are systems in place to connect young people and volunteer opportunities. So a mandatory civic service program could exploit this. and improve living conditions. In turn, this provides a source of pride and engagement young people want. Con argument 3, 18% of youths have a developmental disability, autism, behavior disorder, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome. A statewide compulsory civic service program will either exclude them, which is fundamentally illegal, or have to integrate them at great expense. The legislative analysts here determined it costs 3 times more to educate a student with disabilities. An outdoor program with its risks will demand more. Meanwhile, 5% of youth are gifted, intellectual, athletic, whatever. They need enrichment, not civic service. Con argument 4, better off parents will get their children out of the program. They'll fear random grouping will lead to bad influence. They'll get their teen labeled gifted, or more likely they'll lobby legislatures for exclusions, and they'll probably get them. A crop of private camps that can substitute for the civic program will become a status symbol for the upper middle class families. Pro argument number 5. There are lots of educators available in the summer. Most need a change of scenery and would welcome an outdoor adventure. Teacher training colleges could arrange it for credit. If we trust teachers to spend 180 days with 30 or more teenagers every year, we should trust them to spend 2 weeks with 10. And the teenagers themselves may return as adults to serve as supervisors. And the involvement of young educators will make the program tick, because they'll understand the rite of passage idea and how to implement it. Con argument 5. I can already hear lawyers sharpening knives if hundreds of thousands of teenagers isolate in small groups, each with a single adult. It will be teenagers' words against adults. The program's liability will be great and can't be limited. You can't have an extrajudicial program. In France, people aren't very litigious. You can tell from their playgrounds, which are a lot of fun and more than a little dangerous. Americans would never allow that because the first injured child would put the playground company out of business. And that will happen to this program. Thank you. So that's my